In the last video we looked at mounting a socket into lath and plaster. In this video we're going to look at running the cable, how to get the cable in place. We're going to look at when the stud wall goes across the joists and when it runs along the joists. Here the stud wall is at a right angle to the floorboards, so we know that the stud wall is running along the joists. And we can take a view if the stud wall will be actually sitting on a joist by the position of the nails. The floorboards are obviously nailed to the joists. And in this example here, because we can't see any nails near the skirting board, we have a fair idea that the stud wall is actually sitting on a joist. This is going to affect how we get our cable in place, because we won't be able to drill through the sole plate to get our cable through. But first up we need to get some cable to where we need it, so we're going to have to lift the floorboards. But we have absolutely no idea what's underneath the floorboards. There could be cable, there could be pipe. So I like to take a few precautions. Obviously look what's around you. Is there any central heating, any radiators? Are you near a bathroom where you know there's going to be pipes? Try and think where somebody previously has been. But also very gently with just like a little filler knife, you can sometimes get between the gaps in the floorboards. And you can just have a gentle little tap. See if you can feel anything, any pipe work, any cables. Only very gently. Best to have the power off and all. It's just another little aid which might indicate where pipe work or cables might be. Cut before the nail. I like to use a multi-tool. People often want to keep the floorboards nice, so cut it nice and neat. You can see here I've marked it with a little bit of tape, roughly what I think the depth of the floorboards are, because we don't know what's underneath here. We could be cutting into anything, so you just want to slowly take your time. There could be something going through that joist. And with a pry bar you can kind of just nudge it up a little bit. You can lift the floorboard off the joist a little bit. You can feel when you've gone through the floorboard. As soon as you feel it go a little bit, stop, don't go any further down. The floorboard can be many meters long, so this is obviously just an example. And look, there's a cable here. We could have gone through that. We had nowhere known that cable was there really. Only that the board might have been cut in the past. Another millimetre or so and you could have been cutting through a live cable. That's why it's good to have the power off when you're cutting through boards. You can see here the old conductors, red and black. I'm not a fan of notching the top of joists for my cables. There should be a metal plate over that to protect the cable, but there never is. The floorboard can continue right into the next room. The stud wall's just sat on it, or it could be cut and nailed on the joist, and that's a right pair to try and get the floorboard out. It's often easier just to cut the floorboard where it meets the skirting board. And look, we've got a copper pipe here. You'll never see a safe plate on them either. So there we go, just shows you. You've got to be really careful when you're cutting the floorboards. You don't necessarily have to lift the floorboard directly underneath where the socket's going to be. It can be a board or two away. Sometimes it's easier to cut one board than another. It might have already been cut. As long as you can get your hand in and reach where you need to be. So take a view on the best board to cut. Right, so let's get some cable run. So just drill above the skirting board. So we're going to be drilling down behind the skirting board through the floorboard. But we also need to go through the laths to bring the cable through, up into the void and out for the socket. There's hardly any plaster behind the skirting board, so we can start with a long wood drill. Just offer it up, get your angle, what you want to drill at, and just take it easy and get through the floorboard. So drill down at a tighter angle as you can get. Don't worry about damage to the wall, that can be repaired. Also watch your chuck as well on the drill. That can rub against the wall and cause damage. We want to get between the skirting and the sole plate. We don't want to be going into the sole plate because we won't be able to get the cable through. So a nice tight angle, take your time. I'm starting off with a smaller bit just to get my pilot hole. Then I swap over to a larger drill bit, a 20mm or so. We'll be using 2 cables for our socket circuit. Take it easy going through. You've got a long drill bit here. If you're upstairs you could start drilling through the ceiling. So we just want to get through the floorboard. So when you feel a little bit of give, stop, hand under and have a feel. Obviously stop drilling while you're feeling for the bit. You don't want to drill through your hand. Don't need to tell you that. The larger drill bit will probably kick the skirting board out a touch. Don't worry, that can be knocked back in again. We can sort that out. And we're through the floorboard. Excellent. It's mucky work, so keep the site nice and clean. Best to use a hoover though, so you don't create dust. With the floorboard lifted, you generally got space to get your hand in and get under the floorboards. Get the cable up through the hole. A couple of ways to do this. You can try and fish it through like this and bend it back in through the lath and push it in. I don't like doing it this way. Put a tight bend on the cable, which I don't like doing. What I prefer to do, get a piece of wire up through the floorboards, up through the hole in the lath and plaster, and pull it through that way. Keeps the cable straighter, you don't have a tight kink on it. So feed your wire through and get a bit of tape around the wire onto the cable. I like to stagger the joint. It's easy to get it through the hole in the floorboard. Just generally makes it easier getting it through. And with a bit of pulling on the wire and a bit of pushing on the cable, you can get it through the hole. Keep your cable nice and straight. Inch it through. Keep on pushing it and pulling it. You'll eventually get it through. It'll give you the fight. Don't worry about that. Twin and Earth loves to get stuck on the tiniest thing. Pull plenty of cable through as well. This is only a mock-up, but it's still giving me a fight getting the cable through. But don't force it because you can damage the insulation. Nice and steady. Here you can see the cable, no tight bends. Lovely. So there we go. We've got our cable through. We have to install our cables in the safe zone now. But you might not have to drill through the floorboard at all. If you're lucky enough to be able to pull the floorboard out, it's easy enough to knock out a bit of plaster behind the skirting board and pull the cable through that way, as you would be able to do in this section here. But if you cut your floorboard close to the skirting, it's possible to notch out that remaining bit of floorboard and get your cable through that way as well. You can cut it out with a multi-tool, get a chisel on it, knock it out. That means you don't have to drill down through the skirting board and you've got less chance of doing damage to the wall. So you have got that option as well. And this might seem like the easier option, but I often find it's not. It takes longer notching that little bit of floorboard out because you can't quite get the angle to get right through it. And sometimes you still have to get a drill behind because there's plaster going all the way down to the floorboards. So you just got to deal with what you're being given. Just a little bit more on floorboards though. You get your multi-tool, cut through the floorboard. You can see when you've gone through, the floorboard will be loose. When you lift your board, you can damage the floorboards. People want to have exposed floorboards. You've got to be really careful. So when you lift them, I sometimes get a little scraper behind it, and it can help a little bit in stopping the damage to the adjacent floorboard. You get one nail coming through, but the other one's still quite attached, and it can split at the edge of the board. So just slowly until you feel it start to move. Once you do get the floorboard up, get the nails out. You leave that nail side up, somebody walks in and stands on it, they won't be very happy with you. And once we've got our cable all run through, we just got to secure the floorboards back in place again. Here I'm putting a bit of support in for the floorboard. I generally use screws, keep it nice and tight so you don't get any squeaks. If the floorboards are going to be seen, I like to use nails again. But if it's not going to be seen, either nail it back in or pre-drill some holes and countersink it so the screws sit nice and flush. Use nice long screws so it holds the board tight and you don't get any squeaking. There's rules and regs where we drill our holes and joists. Be mindful though, when you're running your cable, do it along the centre line of the floorboards so you have less chance of a nail or a screw actually penetrating the cable. In the real world, joists are a lot deeper than this, but floorboard nails can be quite long, so you have to take good care when you're nailing your boards back down again. So that's getting the cable in when the stud wall runs along the joist. Let's have a quick look at it when it runs across the joist. So this time you can see the stud wall is going across the joists. Get the floorboard up first, have a quick look. Make sure we're not drilling through anything. Sometimes you pop the board up, knock it back down again. You can then, the nail will stay up and you can pull it out. Makes the board easier to lift. Get the nails knocked out. Just have a feel, see if you can reach from where you are. Couldn't get any closer really, we couldn't get the next floorboard up. That's as close as we're going to get. So we'll just offer up our drill and we can see there where we've got to get through. Obviously you'll have the other side of the stud wall, but we need to get through all that residue of plaster at the bottom of the wall. We will damage the wall a little bit there, can't help that. So with a decent sized masonry bit, get through that residue of plaster. If you try and get through that with a wood bit, you'll just blunt your wood bit straight away. Get a hole through the plaster. It's usually very dry plaster and it keeps falling down the hole that you drill. Then blocking it. Then when you're through with the masonry, get a nice long wood bit, drill down through the sole plate and through the floorboard. Do it as a tighter angle you can get because you don't want to be going through the other side of the wall. You're going to do a bit of damage to the top of the socket there, don't worry, that can be repaired. So get your angle as tight as you need to. Then go through with a larger drill bit, because we've got to get 2 cables through. This can take a while, getting through the saw plate, especially if you've got a bit of a blunt drill bit. Then as before, get a little bit of wire through the holes, through the floorboards. Tape on your conductors, you're pulling through. And then with a bit of pulling and pushing, you'll eventually get the cable through. This can be a fight. You're quite confined, you haven't got much space there with the floorboards. You can always pop another floorboard up to make it easier for yourself. But just keep on going, gentle. Don't pull too hard, because you don't want to damage the insulation. And the cable will eventually come out. You'll get the cable through the hole. Cable's coming through nice there. You will get a few scratches and bruises on your arm banging into the floorboards. There you go. We've got our cable through, ready for your plasterboard box. The first video shows how I like to attach my plasterboard boxes to the lath and plaster wall. I hope that's been of some use to you. I appreciate your comments and the likes that I've been getting. So thanks now, and I'll see you on the next one.